Hi and welcome to my little Aussie Metal Clay along. What we are going to do today is basically a little project, especially suitable for beginners. And as we go along, I will also test and try some of the new Aussie products and also Kim's products that I was kindly sent from Ross and from Kim. For example, these two and this new metal clay in already pre-mixed form. As I said, this will be beginner friendly, so if you have just gotten your first clay and are not sure what you need to start out, if you need some tips for cheap and useful your tools and materials, then this is for you. As you can see, I don't have any fancy tools here, and some of the supplies I use are optional. I will just tell you in a minute about this. So I hope you will just join me and have a little fun. And in this project I will show you some basic mold making techniques, basic clay molding and using the clay, and also just hopefully some useful tips for you. So what you will definitely need are some spacers, something to roll your clay in a special thickness. You will need something to roll your clay with, and you will need a surface where you can roll your clay on and where you can dry your clay on, and also something for non-stick properties and some water to rehydrate. And my budget solution, which I recommend if you don't have any of this yet, is here. And I don't use anything else. I just have regular old playing cards for spacers. I think you might have seen sometimes people write you make maybe an earring 3 cards thick, or the white bronzes from Aussie need to be at least 5 cards thick. So there's designated spacers you can buy, or if you're just starting out and are on a budget, you can use playing cards as spacers. And for rolling, I just use this kind of clay roller. It can be bought in Sculpey and polymer clay shops, also in metal clay shops, of course. You can use other things too, like a solid plexiglass roll, or in the beginning I used stainless steel roll, but it was a bit heavy, so I just swapped to this one. And as a surface, there's a huge variety of Teflon sheets and non-stick sheets and all that kind of things, and they are nice if you have them. You can of course use them and they will work really well, but as I said before, if you're on a budget, I just use this kind of foil. Do you remember from school maybe these overhead projectors where the teacher would just write on this kind of foil and would project it so the classroom can see? And it's this kind of foil. It's thin, flexible and cheap, and I just cut it up in maybe 10 to 10 centimeter or whatever you need pieces, and they will also come in handy for molding, which I will show you later why. And I almost exclusively use these. They will work fine if you don't have anything else or don't want to spend a lot of money. And additionally, as non-stick compound, I just use regular old olive oil. There's again a huge variety of stuff you can buy. I just go what's in the house, and it's olive oil. It works fine, it's nice on your hands. It's of course non-toxic. Of course, if it gets old, if your cards or your sheets are a bit older, they might smell a bit funky. So if you don't mind, you can use olive oil, and if you do mind and if you want a nicer smell, there's also other kinds of stuff like Kim's and cream. She makes them in rose scents or other sort of scents, and some stuff like Cool Slip and all that kind of products. You will need either some molds, or of course you will be able to make your own molds, and I will show you how. For this you need either a pre-made silicone molding compound like Siligum. They come in small blue and white tiny tins, and you just mix 2 compounds and get your molding putty from it, or you can make your own, and I will link Kim's video below where you will see how to mix your own silicone putty for very little cost, and it's very easy too, so you can just decide which one you want to use. Then of course you will need clay, and Ross was very kind to send me this. It's ruby bronze in Superflex, and it comes as a clay. It's already pre-mixed. I have not tried this yet, so as I said, this will also be some kind of little product review as we go along, and it will be very useful, I think, because you don't have to mix it yet. If you have powder clay, no problem. I will also link below how you mix your powder. And there we also need, for mixing, for rehydrating, just some distilled water, which I always keep in a little cute container on my bench. Then of course we will need something for filing and for grinding, and I recommend that you get a cheap set of needle files. They come off eBay for like €10 or something for a big set, and in all kinds of shapes, and very useful. It doesn't have to be the expensive super diamond coated or whatever files, just regular old files, because your clay is not hard. You will sand it in dry greenware state pre-firing, so it's very soft and easy to file. And I always use like this, a very pointy file too, for details. It's also a finer tooth. And what's also very useful, if you can get your hands on this, is sanding sponges. They come in different grids, and I have 800 and I think 1000 and 1200, and it's different grids, and you can use it to smooth out your clay in greenware state too. Very useful if you want to get a smooth finish. And of course maybe some brushes. Just it doesn't have to be the Kolinsky saber, of course not. Just use a cheap brush that doesn't lose any hairs. It shouldn't be the worst, you know. It should have maybe a point if possible, if you want to do details, and a bigger brush just to brush away your dust if you're filing or doing details. This is mostly for if you want to mix some slip, or if you want to smooth out some details. Okay, and of course a craft cutter, X-Acto knife will come in handy, and just some general dentist tools are also nice. I always use this for mixing up my powder clay, for mixing up clay into softer paste, and it's just a general tool that I keep on my bench. Again, dentist tools come off eBay mostly and will not cost you a lot of money, and you do not necessarily need them, but very useful. And also a small and fine pair of tweezers for details, positioning. Sometimes I feel clumsy and can't do the tiny stuff with my hands, like positioning tiny balls of clay or something like that, stones. So pointy tweezers are your friend for this kind of work. And you will need something to finish your fired clay too. Just if you don't have anything else, a brass brush and brushing underwater will do. and of course it's just whatever you have will go. I use a Dremel. I have this, hang on, yeah, this kind of radial bristle brushes in different grids. Very useful for polishing, especially base metal clay. If you have a Dremel or other kind of rotary tool, these are really great to get. And you can also use, you know, felt polishing mobs and polishing compound, or if you have, you can use a magnetic tumbler. I'm using my magnetic tumbler now that I got one, which is also very nice. You don't need it, but if you have it, you can use it and make your life a bit easier. And for tumbling, I will also use this Aussie Metal Clay burnishing powder. Ross has sent me, yeah, just a burnishing compound for my tumbler, but not our focus here, as this is mostly for beginners, and I think most of you don't have a tumbler or something like that. Two optional things are these. The clay spray I haven't really tried yet. Kim has sent it to me for testing. Oh no, that's not right. I have ordered this one for testing and trying it out. And it will rehydrate your clay, and especially the Superflex clays will be back to their usual Superflex properties if you mix this one in. And I will try it, and yeah, you will see how it goes in my video. And this one was actually sent to me from Kim for testing. It's a new recipe for her clay stay, and clay stay is a kind of, yeah, metal clay adhesive. It's not really a glue. It doesn't glue like a Gorilla Glue or something, but it will adhere unfired to unfired clay. It will also be able to attach, if you do it right, fired to unfired and also fired to fired. And this is optional, but I really recommend getting one if you order from Aussie Metal Clay, because it can replace paste. For me, it has replaced try saying that many times in a row. It has replaced my paste, and it just gives a very, very nice bond if you are attaching clay details, unfired clay details to maybe an unfired clay base. You will see in the video later on, I will show you why I love this so much. And of course, for firing your base metal clays, you will need firstly to do test strips, of course, and if you haven't done it yet, join the Aussie Facebook group, where you will find a lot of information, a lot of helpful people there, and if you have a question, just ask and they will all help you and get it sorted out. And yeah, for firing, as I said, you will need a kiln for your base metal clays, and you will need a firing container, and I will just show you mine. It's a bit dirty. I use this kind of gastronomy stainless steel container. It has a lid, it has a container. Just, it comes off eBay. Again, I'm a huge eBay fan. And it fits perfectly into a Paragon SC2 that I use. There's also a bigger and broader kind of container which also fits in very nicely, and I will write the size of these below so you know which one to get if you decide to get one of these. And for burn off, the easiest, it takes longer than a torch burn off, but the easiest way to and most comfortable way to do burn off is also in your kiln. And I use just this kind of stainless steel mesh rack, wire rack, for putting my pieces on, and I put them in my kiln and do burn off. And for burn off, I remove my venting hole in the top of my kiln, And if your kiln doesn't have such a hole, you can also crack up the door a little bit. But beware, if you do a lot of burn off and a lot of clay, it can set off your fire alarm. It has happened to me. So yeah, a bit of smoke might come off the kiln and might set off your fire alarm. So you always ventilate your place well, and if you do a big burn off, but if you only do a test strip or a few tiny pieces, it usually doesn't mind. It will smell funny, you will smell the burning binder. Be sure to just ventilate your space to get all of the smell out, but it's nothing to worry about, it's just normal. Something that is also normal, but you maybe need to know it beforehand so you don't get terrified, is that firing containers and carbon firing is messy. It will make your kiln dirty. It's nothing to worry about, it's just the nature of the beast, so to say, but your firing containers will get really hot. If you fire copper, you will fire it at about 975 Celsius, and your container will start to flake. When it cools down again, there will be black debris coming off your container into your kiln, or if you take it out hot, there might be tiny pieces. If you're very silent, you will hear it. It goes like ping, 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 and it goes away from your container and will make your place dirty. So you just need to know it. I always let my pieces cool down in my kiln because of this, so only my kiln gets dirty, and I just vacuum it out carefully, not to hurt my fiber interior of the kiln and not to harm the thermocouple, but you can just vacuum it out. It doesn't hurt or harm the kiln in any way. It's just dirty and a bit messy, but just vacuum it or brush it away and it will be fine. And the containers have a limited lifespan. That's also important to know. They will break down over time. You heat them and you cool them and you heat them again, and they come at very high temperature, as I said, and in time, it takes some time and a lot of firings, but in time they will start to lose their shape, pieces will break off, the lids will break, and I can just show you one of my very old ones. Hang on. There's pieces that have broken off, and it also has lost its shape, so it doesn't fit in my kiln anymore. This is normal, you can't avoid it, and you just have to live with it. And my way to do this is just to buy them as cheap as I can on eBay in bulk, and when one of them is done, I just chuck it and use a new one. But they last a long time. I had this one for a very long time before it became really broken. And if you don't fire a lot of metal clay, your container will last a long time, and if you fire every day, you will have to replace it more often. But you can't avoid it, and just need to know that this will happen. So I think this is it for the basic tool list, and we can get started. Okay, so now that we have got down our material list, let's just start out with some mold making. And I will use my 2-compound silicone mold putty, and I have a huge amount of it because I make a lot of nature molds, twigs, leaves, all that kind of stuff. And I just figured out that just buying the tiny siligum packets was not really worth it cost-wise, because the bigger packets are really cheaper when it comes down to the gram price. You can also make your own silicone mold putty, which I will link below, where Kim will show you how it works. It's simple, it works, but I have gone down the comfort road where I just don't mix it myself anymore. I just bought these huge packets, which is I think half a kilogram all in all, and yeah, just use those. And basically they all mix the same. You have to weigh out equal parts. It says so on your package too, if you have one of those ready-made molds, and you just mix equal amounts, mix them well so the color is even, and then you just use them for your molding. And I have some kind of plexiglass plate here. You can use a glass plate or plastic plate, whatever. The silicone will come right off. You need either, if you have just a tiny silicone, it probably doesn't matter that much, but for my big pieces I just have two different kind of forks, so I never mix those up, because it can ruin your mold. It will react, so I keep them really separate. Okay, I'm not sure if this is really necessary, but just helps me get down my mixing. I use a scale. You don't have to, you can also, I think you can eyeball it, but yeah, just like weighing it so I can also imagine what the end product will be like in the size. So this is like 4.3. Okay, it's close enough. And I just mix those like this. I fold and squeeze. You will see in my later leaf molding video again. And sometimes roll just so it gets a nice even color. We don't want any marbling effect or something like that. It has to be evenly distributed to cure well. And then I just look at what I want to mold, and I have two pieces here. Just put it down, and I take a little acorn that I collected outside and just gently push it down, maybe form the edges up a bit so they hug the tiny acorn. And I'm working really quick here because this kind of compound that I have, it cures very fast, so it depends on the brand. Next one I have is this maple seed. Also just carefully press it down. It's not really that hard, just try a few times, and it some will come out nicely, sometimes you will get an air bubble or something like that, but just keep going. You will get a lot of nice molds. This compound and silicone and even the self-made compound makes really nice imprints, which translate very well to metal clay. So let's just wait for this to be cured. It will say on your package how long it takes. The self-mixed silicone putty will take much longer in my experience, but just let them sit, be patient, and when they are cured you can remove your organic material, which I will do in a minute. Okay, so I have made some more meanwhile, and they have all cured. Let's just take it out. There goes my acorn mold. Looks quite nice so far. And a maple seed. In just a minute I will show you something that has helped me make molds from softer materials like thin leaves, or even if you think of a yarrow leaf, it has, or fern, it has a lot of tiny leaf things that go away, and it's hard to just put it down evenly. So just now I will show you something that has helped me make molds from this kind of things. Molding soft compounds like thin leaves, like these, can be a challenge because air bubbles can get trapped in the mold, and we want to avoid that, as metal clay will pick up and show even the tiniest of air bubbles and irregularities. So what I'm doing to avoid this is I just cut tiny pieces which are slightly bigger than the leaf I want to mold, and I take an ordinary glue stick and I just put the glue stick on this foil and try to cover the whole area where the leaf will go. So I just make two, as I have two leaves here, like this, and then I just take my leaf. It's usually best if you just snip off this tiny stem, as it goes away from the leaf and will prevent it from laying flat. And then I just take my leaf, bottom side down, up, I'm sorry, up, as we want to mold the bottom side, of course, and just gently tap it down, and it will stick to my surface. And what this will do is it will help you to apply the molding compound to the leaf. I usually do it the other way around. I put the leaf onto the molding compound, which I will show you in a bit. So this one's quite good to go. Just take the second leaf, snip the stem, and glue it onto our foil. So when this is fixed, nice and easy, I just take my surface where I want to put my molding compound. Just roll it out a bit, put it down, smash with my and I will take a bit of water, try to smooth my surface as good as possible, and then I will take one of my leaves and will start pushing it down and gently rolling it onto my compound. I found it's maybe best to start with the bigger part and go towards the point where you basically, if this is the surface, you will just roll it on like this, which will push out the air, and you will get a nice and lovely mold, which you will see as soon as this is cured. So let me just do the second one. Okay, so this has cured. Let's just see how it turned out. So this leaf comes off really nicely. Some leaves don't. I'm not sure why. Maybe it can help to oil them lightly on the back, but I still have to experiment a bit. This one was definitely a good one, and yeah, I hope you can see it here. Texture has come out really nicely. There's still some tiny bubbles. I'm not sure if you can eliminate them 100%, but I found that gluing them and making them stronger that way really helps with getting a better print. So, second one. There's some more little tiny bubbles and such, and I think that was due to me using a slightly hairy leaf. We are starting to have autumn here, so some of the leaves have already fallen off. There's not so much variety anymore, and I just took the first ones that I saw just for demonstration reasons. Basically, it's better to use a smooth leaf instead of one with a lot of hairs. The hair will really give a fluffy and not so clear and crisp imprint. But you just can experiment and see how they come out. So now we are ready to just start on our little necklace project. Now you can make your design whatever you want to make it. You can draw and sketch it out beforehand. You can basically lay out with your molds that you got, or you can also shape some things by hand if you want. It's just about having fun today, and yeah, I think I'm going to do a little Bob Ross approach and just be quite spontaneous and maybe, add a happy little cone friend or something like that to necklace. It's just for demonstration reasons, and you can make it your own in whichever way you want to do it. So let's just get out our clay, and I'm excited because I haven't tried this yet. I mean, I have fired the ruby bronze, of course, but not this premixed clay. So if you are opening your first Aussie Metal Clay package, you will smell that it smells really nice. It smells like, I don't know, maybe some kind of eucalyptus oil. I think it smells like Australia, so it's really, really nice. Oh, there's a new booklet. Yeah, just in a quiet minute, just read it and look at it a bit. It has a lot of useful information, and if you still have questions, as I said, you can just check out the Facebook group, or also write me a comment here if you don't have a Facebook, and I will try to help you. And okay, this is the clay, and there's a Superflex compound, and clay is in here. Okay, so I've just checked the package instructions, and I have used Superflex clay in powder form already, where you have to put the powder into a container, then add your Superflex compound, mix it in, then add the water and mix it to a clay. Here it's a bit different, and we'll just do it as it says on the package. It says that you have to roll it out, your clay, and add the Superflex compound and massage it in and distribute it, and then it will be ready to go. And to roll it, I have just gotten a big sheet, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. Okay, so it comes out of the package quite nicely. I just pick up the rest of tiny bits and bobs that still got stuck, but it feels nice, not sticky, not too dry, feels perfectly hydrated, which is great, because sometimes when you order a clay in lump form, it has suffered a bit. Let's just put it like that. I know that Ross makes the clays fresh before she sends them out, but I don't think every lump clay from other brands is made that way. So I have, when I wasn't using Aussie, when I didn't know of it, and when I was just starting out, I used other brands, and some of them came in a very dry state, and you had to just rehydrate them. And yeah, that was a bit annoying, so I'm really glad. And you see, this is not oil at all. I'm just rolling it out on an unoiled surface, and it doesn't stick, which is great. So let's just maybe 4 cards. It doesn't matter. I think we'll just have to roll it out. So we can distribute the Superflex on it, and as you see, I'm just lifting it up from time to time so it doesn't get stuck, but it really doesn't. I'm really happy with how this is behaving so far. So I haven't done this yet, so prepare for a bit of fiddling here, and just cutting up my Superflex. Okay, so it says to distribute it on the clay, so we'll just do this, and you can see how I fiddle a bit. So just put this on my finger, and yeah, okay. Then I just try and fold it, I guess. Oops. So as you see, there's a better way to do this. I just found this out, and yeah, I distributed my Superflex compound on the surface, and but it didn't get soaked in immediately. So I just when I moved my clay, it just oozed out. So if you mix your clay, I recommend you don't do it like I did, and I think it would be best if you roll it out, put the liquid in the middle, and then transfer it to a saran wrap. I have done this now. It's a bit messy, but if you do it right away, it will not happen that much. And I recommend, this is the way I always mix, I just kind of fold and push down, and I fold it into itself. Metal clay gets folded over and over again, and I do this for rehydrating. I do this when I mix a clay from powder, and I will also do it here. And I have just found that this technique, you have seen I do it on my molds too, on my molding compound. It just gets the clay mixed in really well. So I just pick up the rest of the Superflex compound and yeah, put this away and just keep mixing a bit. So here we go. Now the Superflex is mixed in completely. You see there's no cracks. Clay is really well hydrated, really nice. It doesn't stick to my hands at all, and I didn't use any oil as of yet. So that worked quite well. For storing your clay, again, there's a lot of options, and my budget version is I just fold it into a saran wrap like this. Never use aluminium foil. I don't know exactly what it will do, but everyone keeps advising not to do it, so I will just join in. I think there's a reaction which can inhibit sintering, so always use some kind of plastic foil, but no aluminium ever. And for storing, I just use some kind of glass, whatever you have. And also I put an old sponge in there. It's discolored a bit from the metal powder. There's copper which has colored it green, and I just put a bit of water on my sponge and just keep it moist, put it down in my package, into my glass, sorry, and I put my package of clay in, screw it closed, and it will keep. You just have to re-wet your sponge from time to time, but it will keep nice and wet and moist, and you can keep using it. So let's just get started on some molds. And I usually always cover my clay, my foil, just like this, when I'm not working at the moment, for a short time while I file something. Keep it like this, and for storing I put it in my glass. I have seen people using some kind of clay keeper, which is basically some kind of turned around glass or yeah, container or something with a sponge put in, moist sponge, and they put it over the clay, which seems like a very good idea. And I want to make one of these for myself, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. So, but it's on my to-do list. Okay. I think I'll just start out with my little acorn. And yeah, an acorn is quite a big piece, and I wouldn't recommend making it solid because for weight reasons, for sintering reasons, and also for cost reasons. But we start out, just push down a little ball into the mold, maybe also like this, and just push it out gently. You will see the premium Aussie clays come out of molds very well. And here, oops, okay, you can see how nicely it has come out. Just trim the outside edges, and I will show you in a minute how you can basically hollow this out, so you don't have to make a solid acorn, and this will involve a bit of drying. Now I don't know what you use to dry your clay. There's also a variety of stuff. A dehydrator sounds great. A cup warmer might be too hot for the Aussie clays, as I recommend drying them at a low temperature. Personally, I use some kind of halogen oven. There's like a fan in the top, and I will maybe post a link to a photo so you can imagine what it looks like. But it is basically a glass container, and you put a lid on it, and the lid has a fan, and it distributes hot air throughout the whole container. And I set it on very cool temperature, and the circulating air combined with the warm air dries my clay very nicely. So I'll just pop this into my dryer later on. I don't want to do it while I'm recording the video, as the oven makes a sound, so just set it aside and make my other molds, and we'll return to our acorn later on. So for molding twigs, also just take one of your foils. It's also good because you can have so many of these, as they are so cheap. So you never run out of rolling surface. And if you are a bit like me, then maybe you need a lot of them, as I always tend to work on a lot of little pieces at one time, and some are always drying and I'm working on others, and yeah, so very useful. So for this kind of twig, I just roll a long clay snake, which I just roll in my palms. If you can't manage to roll it evenly, you can just roll it on an unoiled surface like this. And there's also snake rollers, but for this you really don't need to do a lot of effort. And then I just position this on my twig like this, press it down gently into the mold, and to give it an additional squeeze, I put my foil on top and rub it gently. This is why I like these transparent foils so much. You see where your mold is, and you can rub it, and it's especially useful for making leaves, because leaves have a lot of texture. They tend to be bigger, and it's just really useful to be able to rub the clay into your mold while keeping a smooth surface. This foil will keep a smooth surface, and you can still press it down. So we have our twig, and I will trim it again. So I have made some twigs, one twig to accompany the first one. And the good thing about the transparent foils is if I want to have a necklace that goes like this, you know, the same shape but just mirrored, you can position one over the other and shape it on your plate so they will have the same angle, which is very useful. And then I'll just take my alder mold. Here you can see my hoarding tendencies when it comes to molds. I molded all of these. There's so many twigs and leaves and a lot of stuff, and here's my little cone. And to mold things like this alder cone, you just take a little lump. You don't have to be too accurate, you know, just put it down and carefully push into your mold and turn it around, wiggle a bit to release it. There it goes. And you can always sand the back. If there's excess clay, you can sand it after drying, or I will show you what I do with this kind of stuff later on. You can use a smaller amount of clay, which will save you some work. So you see there's not much excess here. And I have, in case you're wondering, I have put some clay here because I want to test out the clay spray. I want to let it dry out a bit so I can test and show you how it rehydrates the clay. For drying thick pieces like this, I recommend that you dry them shortly. You want them to get a hard skin, so to say, so the upper part will be hard, but and you can remove them. You don't distort them anymore. They have to be dried enough. You can put them up, and you see here on the down side they will have a moist core for quite some time. This is the time you can take them out, and I will show you after drying these why I do this. And I'm back with my half-dried acorn. Here the dentist tool comes into use, so I just carefully scrape out what I can from inside this mold. You see it's still moist inside, so you can just remove excess, and this will make your piece lighter, will use less clay and fire much better, because I do not recommend firing super thick pieces, as this can be a bit difficult. It works, but I don't recommend it for starters. And yeah, just scrape it out. It doesn't have to be pretty inside, as you will glue it to a back plate anyway, so yeah, there it goes. And we do the same with these little cones, just to remove yeah, what we can to make it lighter and to use less material. Especially, okay, this is base metal, so it doesn't matter that much, but if you use silver clay, the cost factor really is important to keep in mind. So this is not really dry yet, of course, so we put it back to dry, and now that it has dried partly, we can also just use our firing rack and put it on there, so it can get air from below too and dry faster. My pieces have dried, and They are now ready for sanding, for refining. But first I'll have a look at this one, just the dried up clay that I want to try to rehydrate. Until now I have used normal water, demineralized distilled water, and now I want to try Kim's clay spray. It comes in this bottle. There's a little bit of liquid in there and you have to fill it up. It's all on the bottle, so just give it a spray and try to coat it. And maybe you can see it has been quite crumbly and dry, so definitely there is some moisture needed. Some lumps have already formed from drying. And now I just mix in the clay spray just to see if there's any difference to normal water. And it looks like it forms a better bond in the clay. Water tends to pool sometimes or make the clay smear and stick, and the clay spray just seems to bond and get absorbed better into the clay. It's already coming together again. I'll just keep mixing a bit. And okay, so it has reconstituted quite nicely. There's still some bigger dried up pieces which can be removed by rolling and folding the clay multiple times, but moisture wise it is back to normal. So the spray is really nice so far, really like it, and I will keep using it on my bench to rehydrate dried up clay in the future too. So now that the pieces are dried, you can smooth the back either with your file, or you can also use a sandpaper, which is faster. You don't need a sandpaper, but it's nice, so you can make like this, a figure 8 movement on a very coarse sandpaper, and it will grind down your pieces as far as you want to grind them down. So I usually have some kind of container to collect my dust in, especially when you're working with silver. You don't want to waste anything. You can reconstitute it all. So yeah, I just collect all the dust. Now that you have reached your desired finish on the bottom, you can clean up the sides a bit. It's from cutting the clay away. It can be a bit rough, so just take your file and remove all that is looking not so nice. Just file out all the offending areas and be careful not to break it. I support thin pieces like this twig always lightly with 2 fingers and lightly sand at the place where I'm holding them. Don't hold them here and file in this place, because it will break at some point. So I just support it my fingers, and yeah, takes a bit of practice. If you break something, don't worry, you can attach pieces together again with clay stay, or you can reconstitute them and make them anew from clay. It depends. If a piece, I usually don't repair. If something breaks, I usually remake it for stability reasons. In this case, we will be attaching the embellishments onto a back plate, so stability is not so important. But if you are making a bail or a ring or something that will have to have some stability, I recommend remaking it instead of repairing, because it will be stronger if you just remake it. So now that you have cleaned up your pieces, you can align them in the way that you would like them to be, and I want mine to go somewhat like this, but these are a bit too long, so I just choose a good place, maybe here, just cut. This is Superflex clay, so you can just cut it with your craft knife carefully, but it will not break like non-flex clay. You can also easily cut pieces or a bezel or a back plate with normal scissors, and this is also good for reconstituting, because I always cut up my dried up pieces to easier reconstitute them. This is really a really lovely feature. I mean, so amazing how well you can just cut those pieces without breaking. So useful if you're making a shape and are not sure how it's supposed to look like. You can just roll out a slab, let it dry, draw on with your pencil, and just cut it out with your scissors, and you're done. I'll just refine the points of this a bit, and after that we are ready to go on with our back plate. So for making your own template, you can use a variety of ways. If I need to make symmetrical or also asymmetrical template for a pendant or a back plate or something, I always use normal paper, scissors, pencil and olive oil. And in this case we want to align those pieces nicely. So first of all, I'll just put them on here and just roughly arrange them in the way I want them to go. It's approximately like this. And so we don't need complete paper. And basically you can just arrange your pieces on this. If you have a grid mat, this is useful, so you can just draw a very basic line like this, following your grid, and maybe like this. This doesn't have to be exact in this case, but if you need it to be exact, you can also buy paper that has a grid on it. Can be very useful. There's also rolling mats that have a grid, which you can also use. So be somehow like this. And I just use the rough shape. If I were to do a back plate or maybe a moon pendant or something where the shape needs to be accurate, like in this case the back plate is formed like a little shield, I will just make it in paper. Put olive oil on one side of the paper. I roll out my clay, put the olive oiled paper on, cut around and remove the paper, and there you have your shape. For this I think I will just roll a slab like this, let it dry, and put my embellishments on top and cut it with my scissors and trim it afterwards for a more organic shape. So for thickness I will do 5 cards thick each side, and if you put this template down and your rolling surface on top, you can eyeball the shape, and so you don't have to roll out a huge slab, but you can already shape it a bit in the way you want it to be. So let's just, usually you oil your surface and maybe your hands, your rolling pin, but this clay is very fresh, so I don't think it will be necessary. As you see, I'll just roll a little sausage and like this, and here you have to align it so you have the best angle for rolling. And there's my rolling pin. Gently roll it. I recommend that you don't press down too hard, just let the clay do its thing and roll gently, and this way it won't stick to the back so much. I think we have a general shape. Let's just quickly cut off the excess. Now if this were to be, like I explained earlier, a precise shape, the olive oil would hold your paper down and would basically glue it to your back plate, and then cutting out the shapes would be easier. But here it's not necessary, we will trim it afterwards. And now I can already set this to dry. Of course you can now also decide that this is going to be the back of your piece, and you could put a shallow texture on top, or you could already, if you're rolling it out, roll it out onto a surface. Just always take into account the depth of your texture. So if you have a really deep texture, you might have to make the clay a bit thicker, so the most shallow parts of your mold won't be too thin. But the red bronze, ruby bronze and gold bronze are very strong clays, so I'm going for 5 cards here, which will be a nice thickness for the size of the piece. Now I'll set it to dry. By the way, as you can see here, I find that the Superflex clay has a tendency to warp a bit while drying, but this is no problem at all. Because of the flex, you can just roll it out when it's dried and it will flatten out again. And in this case, I just peel it off my surface, and you see it's still very flexible, and I'll lay it down on a mesh to dry now that the surface has set. If the surface hasn't set yet, you will get imprints from your mesh, and we want to avoid that. But now that it is dry, it will be safe to lay down on a mesh. So it's dry now. As you can see, there's still a bit of warping. The non-flex clays don't warp at all, but the Superflex does a bit, but as you see, no problem. Just take my roller and gently roll it from all sides, and yeah, you see how nice the flex is too. So this is really amazing. If you have never used flexible clay before, it will take some time getting used to. If you want to only sculpt or carve your clay, I feel like the Superflex would not be my go-to choice. I would choose the non-flex version. But if you want to cut out something with your scissors, with your craft knife, if you want to make a bezel wire from the metal clay, or if you have a quick cut or a silhouette and want to engrave or cut something on this kind of machine, then the flex is the way to go. So let's just arrange a bit and see how we can align these. Okay, so I think this looks good, and now I will just quickly open up my new clay stay. I still have an open clay stay that's nearly full, but Kim has sent this to me for testing, as it's a bit changed recipe, and so I'll just try to try out this one too. Just try and get this off afterwards. Okay, so it has a child-proof lock. See, nothing happens, and you just have to push and twist, like with all kinds of child-proof closures, and then you can use it. You have to shake it beforehand. And the way I usually use it is that I put a glob onto my onto a working surface, and this is the first difference that I noticed to my other clay stay, which is here. Here there's a more of a liquid sound going on in this old one, and it's you can't really see, but it's a bit more liquid, I think. This one is a bit more viscous, something like that. And I usually just take the clay stay and rub it where I want it to go, and put it on the back plate here. Oops. And depending on my background, I use care, or in this case not so much of care. If you have a texture, try not to get the clay stay onto it, as it can moisturize it and make it a bit more blurry, but in this case we just have a smooth surface, it doesn't matter. And you put it down and softly, just the slightest bit of rocking motion, you can see it here in my hand, just very, very gently until you notice a grip, and this is when you know the clay stay is setting. Well, maybe not really setting, but it's just locking onto the surface below, and I remove the excess a bit with my brush. Huge advantage to paste is, first of all, you do not have to mix it, and but mixing paste is not that much of an ordeal, and you can mix it easily. But it's cleaner, in my opinion. The clay stay is cleaner, as it can ooze out. You can just wipe it off, and if you have paste and it squeezes out, you have this paste that contains clay, and you have to get it off, and also off a texture maybe, which can also make the texture blurry. And if you just don't remove the clay stay, it will just burn off during the firing, and it will leave no trace. So that's just very useful, and you see how fast it is. So here's the older recipe. I just have to test them side by side, because it's easier to see the difference. See, I just coat it lightly and put it down, rock it slightly, and see, just touching very lightly, but it has already fixed itself. Just remove the excess. Kim, who makes the clay stay, says that water tends to, I don't know, push the clay particles apart a bit, whereas the clay stay just pulls the clay particles together. So if you have two surfaces and put clay stay on each of them, it will, you know, go together and lock like this. And you will see what I mean if you try it out for yourself. You will notice how it just tends to suck itself to the part you're attaching it to. The new clay stay smells a bit different, but not much. And just tissue. I feel like it is setting faster. It gives a faster bond and maybe also a quicker and more firm bond from what I've seen in these 3 pieces that I've attached. Oh, by the way, if you don't have clay stay, then, or if you don't want to order it or anything, then you can use paste, and you just you do it like this. You take either or you can use this, basically you can use this, your shavings and what you have sanded off, and you just take some water and spritz it onto your clay. And then you have to mix it. You can use the powder or you can use normal fresh clay, and in any case you have to mix it with water to just get a nice paste-like consistency. It's a bit of trial and error just to get the consistency that you wish for, but it's not really hard. Just a bit water here, and then you have your paste, and then you can take yeah, for example this tool here, or you can use a rubber tip tool, and you just moisturize your piece a bit. Take the paste and apply it a bit like this, and yeah, but you see it's yeah, I mix it very fast. Usually I would spend a bit more time mixing it, but don't want this video to go on forever. So when you have distributed your paste on the clay, you just put it down like you would with your clay stay, and gently press it all down, do the rocking motion. See how fast it sets. Paste bonds very well, but you have to do the cleanup, so you just have to run your moist brush around here a bit and remove the excess paste, or maybe paint it against the branch so it blends in with your texture. And yeah, that's why I like the clay stay more, because it's just easier to clean up and easier to mix up. So if you have a space where there's maybe a gap or something, you can just apply some paste using your brush. Brush is your best friend for metal clay. And what you can also use paste for is, of course, doing decorations. You can use some kind of impasto technique where you make a really thick paste and smear it on, make a texture in this, and maybe I can show you. Maybe we can do some paste work on this. But I also mix this kind of paste with clay stay instead of water. Okay. For the last piece, I will use my clay stay again because I've already squeezed it out and I don't want it to go to waste. Waste you can also rearrange and push pieces around a bit without messing up your surface below. Okay. So this needs to go to dry. It is a good idea to wait a few minutes until you put it to dry. Kim has said that the clay stay tends to bond even better if you let it sit for a while and dry it then after letting it sit a bit. I haven't done it so far because I didn't know about this, but Kim has told me, so yeah, you might want to try this too. Let it sit, let it rest a bit, and after that we can put it to dry on our rack, on our mesh rack in the oven. So when your piece is dried, you can think about trimming it, and there's also the question of how you are going to attach it. I think it's simple and easiest if you just make this a bit longer here and just drill a hole and attach a jump ring or a chain. So today is supposed to be beginner friendly, so we are going to do this. Usually nowadays I solder mostly. I solder jump rings and eyelets and all that kind of stuff, but today I would like to keep this a metal clay only tutorial, so we are going for the simple route. Basically, depending on your shape, you can also make a bail on the back, or maybe a bail from clay here. There's so many opportunities and possibilities, and it's not really possible to go into all of them here, so we'll just settle on the most simple one. And yeah, I just draw on my shape and see how I want to trim this, and after that we can cut it. So now there's my confession. I'm a really messy worker. I have redone this drawing and shape a few times. You can erase on the clay, which is great, and now I'll just go for it. As you see, this cuts very nicely. Just like this, and you can just sand parts that aren't that nice. The inside, I don't think I will cut it with my scissors, as it is not so easy to make. You know, here I can just go around, but here you have to cut inside, and my scissors are too big, I think, and I don't want to break my piece, so I will go for the X-Acto knife. And I have a cutting surface anyway, so yeah, but be careful, you can slip and, you know, cut yourself here. Always cut away from your fingers, of course. Don't risk, you know, slipping and then slicing up your finger. This is not nice. And yeah, just cut around here. Of course you can, you know, avoid this kind of work if you cut it in a moist clay face, but sometimes I find it easier to just arrange the pieces and then cut it. Okay, carefully, very carefully. You can try and remove this, but really be careful, and if you feel bad about it, just carefully, you know, bit by bit cut around it again. I mean, I'm very reckless with my clay usually, and but if you're not feeling so confident, I recommend spending more time on the cutting instead of, you know, peeling it off like I did. And yeah, we have the general shape, and you can just flip it and see if it's more or less symmetrical, and then we can put these aside. As I said, I just take my scissors and snip them apart for easier rehydration, but I don't want to spend time on this right now. So you just always, you know, support your piece when you file, and then you will be fine. Of course, sometimes something will break, but over time you will develop a feel for the clay. You will feel the difference in the behavior of a non-flex to a flex clay, varying thicknesses, and you will be more confident when it comes to filing. Here, just clean it up as much as you want. You can also, of course, leave it rough, but of course it shouldn't have, you know, pieces that snag on clothing or hair or yeah, on your skin. So just the finish is up to you, just like the design depends on what kind of materials you have gathered. I mean, of course you could do like a sea or ocean themed one where there's little seashells. I think that would be wonderful too, but sadly I live far away from the sea, so for me it's mostly forest stuff. And as you see, usually there's a sharp rim here, so I take the back like this and take, this is a half round file, take the round part and just gently file over this to smooth it out. Yeah, you will develop a feel for this the more often you practice with clay, the easier it will get. And when you have finished your filing, then you can go on to finer sanding if you want. Just always remember, the more you finish in the greenware state, the less work you will have later on. If you have to really, you know, sand out huge blemishes later on in your work when it is fired, you will have such a hard time compared to sanding out greenware clay. I mean, it's so soft. You can also, you know, wet your finger and just run it around an edge to smooth it out, or use a rubber tip tool. There's a lot of different options, and each metal clay artist uses his or her own unique techniques, and really, as long as it works and you get the results that you want to get, it totally doesn't matter which kind of tools or techniques you use. So then, as I said, I'm going to just drill holes here for attaching jump rings and a pendant chain, and of course I find it easiest to use drill bits, but if you don't have those, you can use your pointy file, and I will show you in a bit how this will work, and it's not hard. So for the drilling part, first of all I would just draw where the hole is supposed to go, which is here, and there's still some clay stay, and here, and then just be sure to leave a big enough you know, space around the hole, as you don't want it to be a weak connection. But for if you are working with one of the white bronze clays. I recommend making it the whole thing 6 cards maybe, or 7 to be on the safe side. But for the ruby or copper or even gold bronze is super strong, they don't have to worry about this so much. Just like this, and we can trim it again and file after drilling. And as I said, you can use your needle file, your pointy file, and you just put it down and you twist and twist and twist. Maybe also like this, maybe like when you're making a fire or something. I don't know, I've never made a fire like this, but you get the drift. And always, if you drill, always support the opposite side with your finger, and you can stick your file in and drill, and you will feel the point coming out on the other side. And so you can go in from the opposite side and drill the hole a bit bigger, and continue to do this until your hole has the size you are going for. And then you can, you know, wiggle it just around a bit like this, or just moisten your brush a tiny bit and go into the hole to make it smooth. And yeah, basically that's all there is about this. And if you plan to do more holes than only this, if you want to make a lot of pieces with holes, I highly recommend just getting one of those modeling drill sets. This was, who would have thought, it came from eBay, and it was maybe €2. And yeah, you can just get out the drill size you want. It's labeled here. This is the biggest one, and you just lay it down. That's safest. Put your drill bit down, and oh, that's bad to see. You know, you just do this, just drill with your fingers. Or there's also a thing called, I think, a pin vise, and you can put the drill bit into the pin vise, but I haven't found one yet that can take such small drills. So I'm still using my fingers, which is really painful after a while if you make a lot of holes. But if you only do a few at a time, it's no problem. So you go through, you drill it out. I just go back to this one, so they will be equal size. As you see here, always support, never press your metal clay. Always rest it safely on your fingers, on your hand, or on your desk, until you get more comfortable with it. And yeah, even after drilling there might be some rough edges, so just use your file and your fingers and brush, whatever is needed, to smooth it out a bit. And here we also have this dentist tool, or a ball burnisher maybe will also work, and you can put it in and gently twist it a bit. Will take the sharp edge off, just to make it a bit more nice. Although I am thinking maybe I should just make a tiny excursus on the paste, as I love it so much. Paste decoration is really fun. You can go all mud, splattery, and smash it on, and it's really satisfying in a way. So maybe I'll just put some decoration on it here to show you. I mean, you can leave your pendant the way you want. You can also do earrings or whatever. Basically the technique is always the same. You make embellishments, you add them to each other or to a back plate, and in which way you do this, or in which combination, it's completely up to you. Now I'll show you the sanding sponge. They come in a big plate, but you can cut off pieces with your scissors, and you just go around the edge and it will get very nice. So now I just remove the final dust from this piece, and now we could just call it finished, but I think I will really show you a bit of the paste making. And to do this, just collect all my shavings and sandings that I have here, and then just get clay stay here, just add a few drops. If you plan to make a really fine paste for I don't know, very fine details, and you don't want any lumps in there, I recommend making it from premixed clay, or from normal clay that hasn't just been roughly reconstituted like we did here. But if you are planning to make a woodland grainy texture like this one will be, then it doesn't matter, you can just leave the bits in. Just show you here. You can just apply the paste in some places and push it around like this, and you can coat the surface and distribute your paste evenly, or more or less evenly, and then you can just, you know, make a texture like this with your spatula, with a rubber tip tool. In case you don't know what a rubber tip tool is, it's this kind of thing. It says here taper point color shaper. Yeah, it even has an English writing on it. It's for shaping acrylic paint, but I've never used it for this purpose. I just use it, and this camera doesn't go very sharp, but you can just pull and shape the clay the way you want, and you will get a nice texture. I'll just texture my piece, and after that we'll do a final finish and are ready for firing. So as I have been clumsy and dropped my piece into my paste pot, I now have a paste on my back, and I think I might just use the opportunity to show you another fun paste technique. And here's also a little maker's mark, which I will just put here with clay stay, and it's just a little bit of pressure. And now you can just basically take your finger and do some kind of stippling technique here. This is a lot of fun. It's just, I usually don't like getting my hands all muddy and dirty, but this is just really fun and gives a random texture. You will have to smooth it out a bit after you dot and dip it, but so it won't be pointy on your skin, but it will give a nice texture. If you don't feel like having a mirror finish or something like that, you can just add easy texture and very quick. Now just dry this texture a bit, maybe give it a final sanding, and then we will get back to this piece after burn off stage. So I just rest my piece as it's flat, it's not so hard to fire, just rest it on my burn off shelf and put it onto my kiln shelf and start my burn off according to the clay descriptions and recommendations. Pieces here, very careful now, this is fragile, and this is why I recommend that you let it cool before you handle it, because when it's cool you can gently touch it with your fingers, don't have to, you know, fumble about with tweezers or something. For me, this is a recipe for disaster, so I just touch this burned off clay with my hands carefully. So I fill in my carbon as recommended by the manual, and then I use a little glass to just flatten it out, and then gently I pick it up. Be sure to support it, and it goes into the carbon carefully. So let's just top it up. Add our lid, and we are ready to go and ready to put it into our kiln. Now that our piece is fired, we can just decide how we want to polish it. I'm really liking the patina on this one, but I think as I got the burnishing powder for the magnetic tumbler to test, and this is also a video about testing, I will put this into the tumbler and will just show you in a bit how it comes out. Okay, so this has been in the tumbler for only 10 minutes, so it's not super shiny, but I don't want it to be super shiny anyways. So just to show you, there's already, the surface is a lot smoother. You know, when stuff comes out of the kiln, it's usually rough, but this feels very smooth to the touch. It shines in some places, like on the back where the textures. So I'm really liking the patina and how it has been preserved here. So I just take my radial bristle brush and just Dremel the textures a bit so they will pop out, and I think I will just leave the rest as it is. And basically you can finish and polish and maybe even patina it as much as you want. There's a lot of possibilities. So depending on what you have, you can just, you know, brush it with a brass brush under water, or you can use a Dremel, you can use a tumbler, whatever's on hand and whatever finish you desire. And then you can just attach it when you're finished polishing, attach it with jump rings to a chain or maybe to some kind of cord or leather band, and then your pendant is finished. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful for you and informational. I hope I could show you a bit about all the products that I got, that I was meant to review here. And yeah, this has been my first video of this kind, so please let me know if you liked it, what you liked about it, and if you hated it, what was bad, what I could do better. It would really help me improve my content for future videos. So thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you on the Facebook group of the Aussie Metal Clays. Bye!